Imagine for a moment the serene lagoons of West Africa's coast in the early 1840s. The air is thick with the promise of trade, the scent of salt, and a growing sense of unease. For it is here, amidst this tranquility, that the first seeds of a colonial empire were carefully, almost cunningly planted. This is the story of the Protectorate Pacts, the agreements that would forever change the destiny of the land we now call Côte d'Ivoire. Between 1843 and 1844, French naval vessels, sleek and imposing against the traditional canoes, sailed into these coastal waters. At their helm was Admiral Louis-Édouard Bouët-Wellomez, a man with a mission that went far beyond simple navigation. His objective? To secure a foothold for France on this lucrative stretch of the Gulf of Guinea. He wasn't there to conquer, not yet. He was there to protect. The admiral approached the local kings and chiefs, powerful rulers of peoples like the Nzima and the Apollonians in the regions of Grand Bassam and Assigny. The pitch was persuasive. Europe was a hornet's nest of rivalries. The British, the Portuguese, the Dutch, they were all vying for influence, for trade, for dominance. France, Bouët-Wellomez argued, could offer a shield, a promise of security. He proposed treaties, formal agreements that would place these coastal kingdoms under French protection. In return for this formidable shield against their rivals and assistance in local conflicts, the chiefs would grant France exclusive trading rights and permission to build forts and commercial posts on their land. To sweeten the deal, annual payments, or coutumes, were offered, often in the form of goods like textiles, rifles, and alcohol. On the surface, it seemed like a mutually beneficial arrangement. The local rulers, facing immense pressure from the shifting tides of European competition, saw a way to secure their power and ensure the prosperity of their people through stable trade. Signing these documents felt like a strategic move, a way to play one European power against another. They put their marks on paper, believing they were forging an alliance. But what they were unaware of was the subtle yet profound difference in how each side interpreted these pacts. For the African kings, protection meant a military alliance with a powerful friend. It was a partnership between sovereigns. For the French, however, protection was the first step towards possession. The legal language of the treaties, drafted in French and often poorly translated, contained clauses that transferred sovereignty in ways the chiefs could not have fully comprehended. The permission to build a small fort was, in the French mindset, a concession of territory. The promise of protection was a justification for future intervention. These early footholds, secured in the 1830s and solidified by Bouët-Wellomez's treaties, were not isolated events. They were part of a larger, deliberate strategy. The forts built at Grand Bassam and Assigny became more than just trading posts. They became symbols of French authority, military outposts from which their influence could radiate. They were the anchors from which France would later pull the entire region into its colonial embrace. The ink on these treaties was barely dry when the true nature of the agreement began to reveal itself. French officials started to assert more control, interfering in local politics and bypassing the authority of the very chiefs they had sworn to protect. The coutumes, once seen as a respectful tribute, were increasingly framed as a payment for submission. The French flag, once a symbol of a friendly ally, now flew as a mark of ownership. Over the next few decades, these coastal enclaves served as the launch pad for French expansion. Explorers, backed by the military presence established by the treaties, began to push deeper inland. They mapped the rivers, assessed the resources, and made further agreements with interior chiefs, often using a mix of diplomacy, intimidation, and the precedent set by the coastal pacts. The narrative of protection was slowly, but surely, replaced by the reality of conquest. By 1893, less than 50 years after those first treaties were signed, France felt its position was strong enough to make its ultimate move. It officially declared the territory a French colony, consolidating its various protectorates and claims into a single administrative unit, Côte d'Ivoire. The gradual encroachment had become a full-scale occupation. The veil had been lifted, revealing the stark framework of colonial domination that had been built piece by piece upon the foundations of those early agreements. So, when we look back at the treaties of 1843 and 1844, what do we see? Were they a genuine, if naive, attempt at partnership? a humanitarian shield to protect local populations from the ravages of intertribal warfare or the slave trade, as some French proponents claimed? Or were they a masterfully executed blueprint for conquest, a cynical manipulation where the language of protection was used to disguise the ambition of empire? The reality, as is often the case in history, is likely a complex mix of both. There were certainly French individuals who believed they were bringing progress and security, but the overarching state policy was undeniably expansionist. The treaties were a tool, a means to an end. They exploited a gap in understanding, a chasm between two vastly different worldviews and legal systems. The legacy of these pacts is etched into the very fabric of modern Côte d'Ivoire. The political boundaries, the economic structures, the linguistic and cultural influences, all can be traced back to these initial encounters on the coast. The signatures of the kings of Grand Bassam and Assini were not just marks on a page. They were the turning point in their people's history, a moment that set them on a path they did not choose and could not have foreseen. The story of these protectorate pacts is a powerful reminder that history is often written in the fine print. It challenges us to look beyond the stated intentions and examine the ultimate consequences. In the quiet exchange of promises and signatures on those West African shores, an empire was dawning, casting a long shadow that stretches all the way to the present day. What do you think? Were these treaties a clever shield for trade or a deceptive trap for conquest? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. It's a debate that continues to this day. Thank you so much for joining me on this historical journey. If you found this interesting, please consider liking the video and subscribing for more deep dives into the stories that have shaped our world. See you next time.